I'm just amazed how many hours people have put into this project and how they've learnt not only about their histories, their own histories, but about the histories of other women, and they've created their own stories. So people have made friendships, they've supported each other, they've gone around to each other's houses, they've got other people involved. So from a core group who are based in Wellington, it's just spread not only through New Zealand but abroad, and panels makers have actually gone abroad and got other people involved. So they've taken their panels with them and had them stitched in China, in France, in Canada, so it's gone around whole families. It's reconnected people to lost relatives. They found objects that have been missing. So there's been so many things that have come out of this project. The big one, I suppose, for me is that the New Zealand government now have the first known picture of the woman Mary Carpenter, who was the first signatory on the 1893, and they didn't think that there was a photograph of her. But from the Facebook page that we created, that appeared sometime a couple of months after the project started. The amount of administration that this would have taken, and technology. One of them has been, obviously most of the makers are not in Wellington. It's had to be done by email. We've used Google a lot. And what we discovered though was if we use email and we send out forms to get them checked, so for a good example is we had to check everybody's name that was going to appear in the brochure, and we attached it via an Excel spreadsheet, but it turns out that extra emails don't send their emails with any attachments, so the people didn't get them, and then you only hear about it after print runs. So there's a few people unfortunately that have been missing, so I want to apologise to Wellington Tatting Group as that didn't get updated because it wasn't reviewed. So that's been interesting, is dealing with technology on a bigger project. There's tons and tons of stories, but I think some of my favourite stories are the stories that have been created along the way as we've made them. And one of them relates to a lady called Dallas, who is based in Dunedin. And Dallas and her family set up their own Facebook group, and all the relatives that they knew got involved. And they started collecting the history so that it would influence what their panel looked like. And she had some distant cousins on that group, and they were kept mentioning this sea chest that had been in the family, and nobody could remember what happened to this sea chest. And the sea chest had come over, and when it had come over from England, it had the ship painted on the underside of it, inside the lid. And I think it was England, it might have been Sweden, I can't quite remember which country it was, but it disappeared. Anyway, roll on a bit, they're doing their panel, and a distant relative got in contact who also lived in Dunedin. She said, come along and have a chat. So she went over to her house and she mentioned this chest, and the lady said, oh, turn round, take the cover off that piece of furniture behind you. And underneath it was a chest, and she lifted the lid, and there was the ship, painted like the day it had been done. So the lady said to her, oh, take the chest. So the chest is now back in the family.
Oh,
that's my favourite story. That mainly craft and sewing and different methods of making are seen as a legitimate art exercise, and that people take interest in the histories and they find more out about that. But what I'd love for the project is for it to hang in different places across New Zealand. So now that it's in one place, people can see the concept. It's very, okay, we're doing 546 panels and there's 300 metres, but people don't quite grasp what it's going to look like. But now they can see it. I'm hoping that other museums will pick it up and other spaces, and it will tour the country. But also that we find a home for it at the end of that. And I would love for it to continue, for it to have a space where people can come in, they can look at it, they may be able to use it as inspiration and create another piece of work from it. And that doesn't have to be a panel, that could be clothing. They could use the techniques that they see on the panels or the history that they see to inspire them. But also a space that, you know, kids could come in and they could have a history lesson, or it could be a space where groups might come in and they might discuss, so it could be corporates might come in and discuss with the panels hanging around them how they encourage women to go forward in the workplace, how we deal with women's issues with government, all sorts of a space that it could be that different activities could hang off those panels. Because it's a huge work, and a 300 metre, if you hung it singly, you need a big space. So a lot of people thought, oh, it'd be like a quilt and it'll be all sewn together. Yeah. But I didn't want it, I knew that it had to go into different spaces. So what we came up with was we'd do it with safety pins. Hanging it together. And safety pins for women in the old days was such a massive thing, because we held nappies together with it, we held clothing together with it. So we decided that, and then obviously for me, there's the Elizabeth Hurley dress with all her safety pins down, so it had a fashion-related thing to it as well. That if we did safety pins, then it meant that it could actually be hung in any way and in any combination. So if there are museums that only want to show a certain section of it, then they can show just a section, because we can take it apart and rearrange it in different combinations. So it gives it some flexibility. Yeah. Well, all the 546 makers for a start, who without them this exhibition wouldn't exist. So they've put in multiples of hours in the evening getting this done. Many of them have full-time jobs, so like the women in the old days, they would have sat there in the evening stitching up their family's clothes or making new clothes, etc. So I'd like to thank them. And then all of the makers who've put in, based in Wellington mainly, have put in extra hours, sewing on the backs, putting on the tags, sorting them out into order. Then there's all the editors based around the whole country, so they've got involved, they've edited the Tumblr blog that we've made. And then the museum. I mean, the guys here have been great, and Rachel and the team have just pulled all the stops out to get this done. And I just can't say thank you enough to them, because as well, we needed a space to hang it, and you guys have been here the whole time behind us.